Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have the Simon Says Stamp March card kit for 2020, and this one's called Stronger Together. As of filming, this is still available, so I will have it linked down below if you're interested in that. But let's go ahead and take a look at what came in this kit. This has a lot of goodies. They always do. They're always worth their money. And to start off, we have candy, of course. So who doesn't need a little candy while you are crafting? We also have the Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky Glue. I do like this glue a lot because you can usually set it right upside down and then keep the glue at the tip, which is nice. We also have some Doris Studio 71 watercolor pencils. I use these quite a bit, not really to watercolor, but I do use them. There's also the Hello die, that's the Simon Says Stamp one, and then we have 3 envelopes from Simon Says Stamp in white, mint, and metallic lavender. We also have 3 floral Susie P watercolor cards, very beautiful florals. Then we have 12 Multicraft Spring Flower 6x6 papers. I'm just going to open these up and we'll take a look at them. I love the Multicraft papers because they're all like this watercolory feel, and they typically are just absolutely beautiful papers. This is not the first time Simon Says Stamp has used these in their card kits, and I always get excited when I see them. They're just beautiful. And then we also have the 6x6 glitter paper. I'll get to that here in a second. It's beautiful. And then we have the 6x8 Stronger Together stamp set. This has some amazing sentiments in it. I love this because, you know, we move a lot, so I'm always missing my friends. Then we have the idea sheet, and then we have some Simon Says Stamp papers in the color Cornflower Blue, Lavender Mint, and the 120-pound white. So let's get started making some cards. For card number 1, I'm going to take a piece of the pattern paper and I'm just going to put that inside my MISTI, and I'm lining up one of the flower stamps at the top, trying to be careful because I don't want that paper to shift too much. And I'm going to ink up my stamp with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink because I'm not going to do any Copic coloring. This is a good ink for pencil and watercolor as well, but I don't plan to do any watercolor either because this paper probably couldn't handle that. So I'm going to just move my paper up, and I'm trying to mask off just the upper leaf because I don't want that to stamp. And then I'm going to stamp out or ink up the rest of the flower, and we're just kind of going down the line. As you can tell, my stamp, I didn't ink up the top part of the flower, so I'm just going to use a memento pen because that will work just fine. And I'm going to show you just a little bit of the coloring. I'll show you a couple of the leaves. I am starting off with a very, very light hand. These are the watercolor pencils that came in the kit. I don't plan to use them as watercolor, and I'm just going to use one green, but I'm going to show you how you can build up the color there. So I started off super, super light, and then I came back in darker just to add my shadowing just with the one pencil. So you wouldn't need a bunch of pencils to do your coloring. I like having a lot of colors, so you know, as I've said before, I have full set syndrome, so I like to have all the things, but that's basically, as you can see, all the leaves. I colored them all the same, and I did leave some white space. I'm going to do the same thing with the flowers. I've got a little bit of pink there, and these I'm actually going to come in with 3 colors. I'm not going to just build up the pink. I'm going to build up with 3 colors. So I'm using that lightest pink, and I'm going super, super light-handed, mostly because I do want to build up some of that color. So I'm going to come in with a darker pink, still going pretty light-handed here. And I'm just going to add my shadows where I think that shadowing might be on these flowers. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to come in with a purple, and I'm going to intensify that color. Now, it was harder to build up by that 3rd level. It was harder to build up some of that color, but I love how that turned out. And I end up coloring all the flowers the same way. And I love stamping and coloring on pattern paper. It's just fun. Now I'm just going to fussy cut around that right-hand side all of the leaves and the flowers. I have a plan for this, so I'm not cutting out the whole thing. You easily could, but that's what I plan to do. And my card base is some of the purple cardstock that came in the kit. That's the lavender cardstock, and I just scored that at 4¼ inches. I'm going to trim down my panel now so that this panel will fit on the front of that. So that means I'm going to have to trim this down to 5½ inches. And then I think actually I do, 5½ inches by a little less than 4¼ And then I'm going to use the Hello die along with some of the glitter cardstock that came in the kit. And then I also cut that out 2 other times just with some white cardstock. And I'm going to layer these up so that my Hello is about 3 deep. And then I'll put the glitter cardstock right on the top of that little. So it just makes it seem like it's more of an embellishment rather than just the words. So I'll just use that liquid glue that came in the kit, which is a very good liquid glue. I like this stuff. And then I'm going to tack it down to the front. And then before I tack that to the front of my card base, I'm going to stamp on the inside. I love the way these sentiments are set up. So you have some regular nice big sentiments, and then you have these like bannered sentiments, which are so cool. And I just inked that up with the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I love that it says, "Though we're far apart, you are always in my heart." And then I'm going to stamp or ink up with some VersaMark ink, just the flower that I'd used on the outside. So we have a little bit of a watermark flower on the inside. And then when that's all done, I'm going to attach my card panel to my card base. And it's just super simple. That will be that. I do have a little bit of hangover at the bottom, so I'm going to trim that out using my Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer. But here we have the card, all colored and cut, and that's card number 1. For card number 2, I have a piece of heat-resistant vellum by Brutus Monroe, and I'm putting this inside of my Misty. And I've inked up all the leaves, and I just inked those up with embossing ink or VersaMark ink. And then I'm going to cover those with the Brutus Monroe silver lining embossing powder. I just thought this would go so pretty with the pattern papers that I end up choosing. And I like the vellum because it's see-through, but then that silver just really sticks out. And so I'm just heating that until that is smooth and melted. You don't have to do it very long. And then I'm going to completely cover that entire panel with the leaves and do the exact same thing with it. I end up doing it with another piece of, it's like a really heavyweight vellum, almost not see-through. I don't use that panel. I might use it for something later, but what I'm going to do here is I'm taking 2 Copic colors that matched the greens that I liked, and I am just coloring those on the back. I'm not doing it on the embossed side. I'm doing it on the back. So I'm starting off with G12, and then I'm going to come in with, believe it's BG34, just as my darker color. And it looks kind of weird on the back there, but when you flip it over, I love the softness of that. And so that's what that looks like all done up. I'm going to cut that panel down using some My Favorite Things stitched rectangle STAX dies. And then you see the pattern paper that I have. That's like a striped pattern paper. I'm going to use a bigger stack die on that one, and it'll just give a nice stitched rectangle around both of those pieces. And I'm going to layer those up. So we'll run this one through on the bigger one. And then I have some another piece of the pattern paper, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment onto there. So that one says, "Dreaming of when we are together again." And I use the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink for that because it just stamps so beautifully. I'm lining up the pieces that I want to put on the inside, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment on the inside that just says, "Miss you." And then we'll go ahead and finish the outside of our card. I'm going to set the rest of this off to finish later. So what I want to do is attach that vellum panel, but first I'm going to trim down my sentiment. And I noted that I hadn't trimmed it, or I hadn't put it on there straight, so that's why I was trimming it down a little bit. And then just using that guillotine trimmer, I did the rest. I just want to add just a little bit of, detail on the edge. So I'm using that stitched border die or stitched rectangle to add just a stitch marking on the edge there. And then I'll trim down the rest of my sentiment. And then we will go on to attaching the vellum piece. So in order to do this, because it's vellum, your whatever adhesive you use will most likely see through, or it'll show through. So I'm using tiny, tiny dabs of that craft tacky glue. And I'm just using it on the edges, just dots of it all over the edges. And that's going to be enough to hold it down. I'm not concerned about it. It will definitely hold down, and you don't end up seeing that show through. And then I'll use that same tacky glue on the back of my patterned paper piece and stick that down to my card base. And then I'm going to use foam tape on my sentiment just for something, something will be popped up. And then I'll attach the inside pieces. But if you notice, I did use a piece of foam tape and I stuck it on the outside of my card. The reason I did that is just so that way I'm not trying to guess as to where I need to stop with the foam tape. So I'll peel off all of the release paper on all of those pieces. And then I will use my glass mat to line up my sentiment, and then I'll stick that down. I'm going to bring in that guillotine trimmer one more time so that I have a nice clean cut, because I did use foam tape. I don't trust myself all the time. And then I'm going to bring in some Nuvo drops in the color Silver Lining. I'll put 3 drops there and then 3 drops down below, and then I'm going to actually tap those onto my embossing powder canister, and that's going to finish off card number 2. Love how that one turned out as well. Card number 3 is a super easy one because I had already colored these panels up, a couple of them, just sitting there watching TV. Just color those with the watercolor pencils that came in the kit, but I didn't use them as watercolor pencils. I just used them like colored pencils. And now I'm going to fussy cut that entire piece out and trim down some patterned paper. And I'm going to leave this the size of the whole front of an A2 size card. And I love that patterned paper. It's a little busy with that background, but I like it, or the background's a little bit busy with this flower, but I really like it anyway because it's subtle enough. I'll cover the back with some foam tape, and then I'm going to put my patterned paper piece into my MISTI so I can stamp down my sentiment. And I'm going to use that same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And that's just such a great black ink. I'll put my card base into my MISTI, and I'm going to bring in the flower that's in the kit, the big one. And then I'm going to ink that up with some Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink. I thought that matched the blue nice enough. And then that's going to be all we put on the inside. I thought this could just be a nice blank, basically, card with that hello friend. You could put whatever you wanted in there. I'll tack it down with the Craft Tacky glue, the card panel. And then I will start peeling off all of the release paper on the back of my flowers. And then I'll tack that down to the front. I thought about adding a little bit more to it, but I decide not to. I do have a little bit of hangover, so I'm going to trim that excess off with my scissors. And then that's going to finish off card number 3. Very easy. And it's fun to color just sitting in front of the TV like that, I'll tell you. Card number 4 is another easy one because it uses another one of those panels, and I've already trimmed this down to be 4 inches by 5.5 inches. And here's my card base. It's some of that mint cardstock that came in the kit, so I'll score that at 4¼ inches. And then I will get ready to start assembling everything. So I'm going to go ahead and put this panel right onto my card base. I had already stamped out, my camera died in the middle of this, and so I'd already stamped out the sentiment. It was the big one, and then I just went ahead and trimmed it down all around it so that it was 4 separate pieces instead of just the one big stamp. So it'll say, though we're far apart, you're always in my heart, and I just think that's kind of fun how you could do that. You could leave it as it is, or you could cut it apart very, very simply. I just use my guillotine trimmer to do it. And then I'm going to tack down everything using my Craft Tacky glue. And then I decide I do want a sentiment on the inside, so I'll grab that Miss You sentiment and I'll stamp that using that same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And then once I'm done with that, that's going to finish off card number 4. Like I said, super simple and easy. When you just sit there and you have a chance to color when you're doing other things, you can have a lot of easy card panels done for yourself. For card number 5, I just have a piece of cardstock that I have put into my MISTI, and I'm going to ink up that really long, cool leaf pattern, which is, I just really think that is a neat pattern. I'm going to ink that up with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then I am going to actually turn my paper because I want to try to line it up. So I start off using some acetate thinking that maybe that will help, and then I come to find out that's just, it's not that it's helpful, it's not that it's hurtful, it's just not necessary. So once I've kind of got it figured out, I'm going to line up my stamp how I want it, put the magnet down, and then I'll ink up the stamp again using that same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I just wanted it to be like a cool border, and you could do the entire piece like this, I think. It would be really cool to go back and forth, but I just chose 2. And now I'm going to color the leaves all the same, basically. I'm using 2 greens. This first one's like an olive. This next color is a little bit brighter. And so then I'll bring in the olive again and kind of subdue that color just a little bit more. But I'm going to color all the leaves the exact same, just using these 2 colors. And then it's fun. It ends up, not taking hardly any time at all. This card was a super quick one, like they all typically have been. And then when I'm done with the coloring, I'm going to fussy cut that out. Just going to go along both sides of it. So it's going to be one long strip of those leaves. And I'm leaving a decent sized white border, mostly just moving the paper and keeping my hand the way it's, just straight. And then we're going to stamp our sentiment. So I'm going to use my magic powder bag on some black cardstock that I have in my stash, and I'll ink up my sentiment using some VersaMark ink. It's just a clear sticky ink. And then stamp it down, and then cover that with some Alabaster embossing powder by Brutus Monroe. And then I'll heat set that till that is smooth and melted. You'll be able to tell because it'll be shiny, no longer like a matte finish. And there is some residue left behind by that magic powder bag, but that's an easy fix. You just kind of let that cool down, and then you can use a microfiber cloth or even your hand and just rub the excess away. Then I'm going to put this into my Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer, and I'm going to trim it down. Then trim both of the edges down. Sorry, I'm kind of off screen here. And then once again, we'll put our card base into our MISTI, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment that says call me, text me, whatever. I just thought that worked really nicely. Well, all the sentiments work really nicely together. And then I'm going to turn it. I'll put that little leaf pattern one back in there. And then I'm going to ink this up with some VersaMark ink just for a watermark effect. Stamp that down. And then the inside of our card is all done and ready to go. And then we'll start assembling the outside. I'm going to cover both pieces with some foam tape. Well, just the sentiment's going to have it on the edges, but the leaf pattern had it all over the back. And I'm going to use some liquid glue on the center of my sentiment. This way everything's kind of flush, but those edges aren't just kind of hanging there. So that works there. And then for a final bit of embellishment, we're going to grab some Nuvo Ivory shell drops and I'll put 3 of those there. And then that's going to finish off card number 5. Love how that one turned out too. For card number 6, our final card, I have a piece of watercolor paper and some acetate there that you can sort of see, and I'm just putting down some distress ink onto that, just regular distress ink. That first color was Tumbled Glass, and now I'm going to use a little milled lavender, and it's hard to see on there, but all I'm doing is basically doing some controlled ink smushing. That next color was Stormy Sky, and then I'm going to pull in some Evergreen Bough. I had an idea of the colors, obviously, that I wanted, and sort of an idea of where I wanted them to be, and that's why this sort of controlled ink smushing is a lot of fun. I'm going to heat set this in between because I want this next, I want it to be really good and dry before I bring in the next layer. And so I'll just bring in just little bits of that color again, just trying to give it little pops. And you really can't see it that great on camera, but in person it's really, really pretty. And then once again with that Stormy Sky. And then I will come in some more with that Evergreen Bough, which this green is so cool. I don't give it enough credit, I don't think. So then I heat set that, and I'm going to put it into my MISTI, and I'm going to grab one of the stamps. I'm going to ink that up with the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I'm going to stamp that just in that area, and then I'm going to flip it and stamp it again. I want the petals to be kind of where the blue is, and the leaves kind of where the green is. And then I am going to start doing a little bit of coloring. I'm not going to show you a whole lot of it. I'm just going to show you a little bit of it. But it's basically the same sort of thing that I've been doing. I'm actually not even going to color the entire piece just simply because I want those petals. I want the color behind to really show through, but this is a neat way of really adding a lot of texture to your pieces. And the only reason I left this card in, because the end card is not my favorite, but I really love this panel. Like, I want to do this to so many things. I want to ink smush and then color pencil all over the top of it because I just think it's such a pretty look. But yeah, the end card, I really messed it up. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe it was too early in the morning. I'm not sure. I did cut out that hello die 3 times out of black cardstock, and then I'm just going to glue that together. And then I had some of the cardstock from the kit, and I'm going to just ink up one of the flowers using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to stamp it down on the bottom. I wanted it to be one continuous one with the petals showing on the top and the bottom. And so it really doesn't matter that it's overlapping in the center because the center is going to be covered by the panel. But again, this just really was not my favorite card today. The panel itself is gorgeous, but Not a fan of the card. And then I decided to stamp it on the inside of the card as well, just to have it at the bottom. So once again with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, you know, because I got to do something on the inside of the card. And then I'll get ready to assemble the piece. So I'm going to use some of that liquid glue and put down this square panel. I did cut this out using My Favorite Things Wonky stitched square die. And so this is where I just put it kind of in the middle. At this point I still wasn't even sure. And I'm looking at this going, I really hate that those petals are sticking out. But it just didn't look right to have, I don't know, no matter how I put it together, for some reason in my mind it just wasn't looking right. And so at this point I'm going, I'm going to trim this down. So I pull out my Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer and I trim it down, not really even thinking that there is something stamped in the inside. So maybe I will be able to salvage this piece later, but I continued to work it anyway. And this when I open it up and I go, ah, it looks terrible. Oh well, what are you going to do? So as a final bit of embellishment, I do grab some Nuvo drops in the color. What color did I grab? These are the sweet lilac ones that I used previously, and I'm just putting a few drops on there. But yeah, love the panel, hate the card. So there it is, card number 6. But check out that panel. Pretty fun, huh? All right, so as I said, we did make 6 cards. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 6 cards that we made today. I would love to know which one was your favorite. If you did in fact have a favorite, go ahead and leave that down in the comment section down below. I said this every time. That's probably one of my favorite things about making the cards, is hearing what you guys think. And thanks so much for just being so incredible. You guys are an amazing group of people, always leaving the kindest of love and giving me the thumbs up and helping with my affiliate links and all the wonderful things that you guys do. You guys are awesome. So if you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye.